Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. Today's video is aimed at those who are planning on emigrating and wondering whether or not they should ship all of their belongings with them. There's pros and cons to taking everything with you or to just leaving it behind and starting fresh and repurchasing all of your household goods. So in today's video, I kind of want to explore the pros and cons of taking everything with you, and then you can make a decision what is right for you to do. As a backstory, I've done it both ways. In 1999, my husband Grant and I moved from South Africa, where we'd been born and raised, and we went to England. And we didn't take anything with us except for 2 suitcases, and then we did ship or fly over 6 boxes. And the boxes contained things like CDs and shoes and photo albums. We chose not to bring over all of our household goods because we didn't have that much to start with. We'd only been married for almost 4 years, and we didn't have loads of expensive furniture or a full household's worth of stuff. We just thought it would be easier to get rid of everything and then start fresh in England. Then in 2011 we moved to New Zealand, and this time we had 2 children with us, and we chose to ship everything over. We had a 20-foot container. We dismantled as much of our furniture as we could, flat packed it, and we had the shippers come and load up our goods into a container and send it on to New Zealand when we moved over here. So that is kind of my experience that I'm speaking from. I've done it both ways, and in my opinion, bringing everything with us did work out better. It was the right choice for us, but of course it's not going to be the right choice for everybody, and you just have to make that decision for yourself. So I'm just going to dive straight into the pros and cons, and these are in no particular order, and they're probably going to be mixed up with each other, but these are just different points to consider. So you're probably going to want to bring some things with you anyway, whether you're moving as a family or as an individual or whatever your circumstances are. You're very unlikely to just come over with what's in your suitcase. You're probably going to have, like I mentioned, photo albums or sporting equipment or sentimental things that you are going to want to ship anyway. And yes, you can just ship a box or 2, but if you're shipping things anyway, you might as well add more stuff and just ship a full container instead of a part container. The pros for us in shipping all of our stuff, and what helped us make the decision, was that the cost of the full container, like I said, we had a 20-foot container and we fit all of our household goods into there, and that cost us £4,000 to ship to New Zealand. And it was going to cost way more than £4,000 to replace all of the stuff that we managed to fit into that container. Clothes, books, toys, kitchen stuff, furniture, bedding, linens, all that kind of stuff. So for us, cost-wise, it just worked out cheaper to ship everything than to replace everything. I also found another pro being the familiarity. Like I said, we moved over with our 2 children who were 6 and 9 at the time, and it's a big adjustment. When you move to a new country, it is a big adjustment, and having our stuff and their own furniture and their toys and their bedding and all the things that they were used to and made it feel like home helped with that sense of familiarity and feeling like this is home now, rather than absolutely everything in their life being new and different. Not gonna lie, it helped me as well to have my things that I was familiar with and that I had chosen and enjoyed, and to just have all of that come and be able to assemble my home around me. That definitely helped me to feel more settled as well. Another pro of shipping all your stuff is that you don't have to go through all the trouble of doing all the shopping and finding all the things and replacing everything. It's not just the expense, it's the time and the effort that it takes as well. Without having actually lived in your new country for a while, you might not know the best places to shop for things, and you might end up spending more than you need to because you don't know of the good bargains, or you know which stores often have sales. The stores that do have sales, for example Briscoes is always having sales, so they're a great store to go to if you want kitchen goodies or bedding or linens and things like that. But if you're needing your stuff like now, you might not have the luxury of waiting until their next sale, even though they are quite frequent, and you might not know that they discount things quite steeply. So you'll just go into Briscoes, spend full price and everything, and spend more than you need to. Partly out of a lack of knowledge and partly out of not having the luxury of being able to wait. You'll also have to arrange delivery, or you'll have to be carting furniture and things to and fro. When you move to a new country, there is so much life admin that needs to be done anyway, without actually going and replacing everything in your household as well. You're going to need to be sorting your driver's license and utilities and getting the kids registered at school and finding their school uniforms and all these other things. And when you add in having to buy an entire household's worth of stuff at the same time, it can be a lot. Online shopping is not a huge thing in New Zealand. There's no Amazon, there's certainly no overnight delivery, and you're probably going to have to go out and buy the things you want. I mean, there is some online shopping, but it's, like I said, it's not overnight, it's not quick, and it's probably in your best interest to go out and look at the things you're going to buy, because not everything may be the same kind of quality that you're used to in the country you've moved from. So those are some of the reasons that I just found it more convenient and just better for us that we had shipped all of our stuff. But the obvious disadvantage is that for us moving from England to New Zealand, we were without our stuff for 12 weeks. So we actually sent everything about 6 weeks before we left England, and we were just sleeping on mattresses that we hadn't planned to take with us, using bedding and linen that we hadn't planned to take with us. We were just passing it on to friends when we left. We still had our washing machine. I think we got rid of that last minute. There were a few things that we hadn't planned on shipping with us that we were just kind of making do with. We also borrowed some like folding chairs. Somebody lent us a TV and some video games for the boys to play with before we left. So we had a few bits and pieces that we just weren't going to ship that we could get by with after we sent our stuff. But there is that period of limbo. For 6 weeks, you just basically camping without your stuff. So that is something that you'll have to arrange and work around. You could go into furnished accommodation, perhaps you can stay with family, but it's something to take into account if you are going to be without your stuff at the beginning. Some people ship their stuff and then immigrate at exactly the same time, and then in their new country they are without their stuff for however many weeks it takes to be shipped. So like I said, we sent ours about 6 weeks before we left, and then for about 6 weeks after we arrived in New Zealand, again, we didn't have our stuff. We were still waiting for our container to arrive. During that time, we were lent so many things from people we didn't even know. I had made a contact on the internet, and she was super helpful in helping us find accommodation and rounding up through her friends some bits and pieces for us to borrow. People are very generous in New Zealand, and we were very lucky to be lent all of the stuff and to have it all there and ready in our home, so when we arrived we could just kind of move in and at least have things to get by with. We had blow-up mattresses, foam mattresses, we had bedding, blankets, pillows, towels that were lent to us. We had a couple of sofas and a TV, table and chairs, microwave, fridge. It was super helpful, and I will always be grateful to this friend for all of her help. There were plates, cups, glasses, cutlery, pots, pans, everything that we needed to get by until our container arrived. If you don't have the same privilege of having people as contacts who can lend you things before you arrive, you can go into temporary accommodation such as Airbnb, which is fully furnished. That can be quite expensive, but I know our situation was quite unusual that we'd rented a house before we even arrived. Most people would not do that, and I would not actually recommend that you do that. It's probably in your best interest to stay in temporary furnished accommodation anyway while you look for a place to stay. But let's say you're staying at an Airbnb, and then 3 weeks after arriving you find a rental and you move in, and now you've got no stuff because you're waiting for your container to arrive. Maybe you don't have contacts in the neighborhood or anyone who can lend you things. You can go to charity shops, thrift stores over here, they're called op shops, and you can pick up some inexpensive plates and things like that. The Warehouse, Kmart, but that is a con. You will quite possibly be spending money on things to live with anyway while all your things are being shipped. So that can be an added expense, and like I mentioned before, it's the hassle of having to go and buy these things anyway. So it is something to consider. Another con is you don't actually know what's going to arrive damaged. If you're choosing to keep an item, to pay for it to be packaged up, shipped halfway around the world, and then obviously unpack it in your new home, you obviously care about that item, you value it, and you want it. And everything may or may not arrive fully intact or undamaged on the other side. We used PSS as our shippers. I would recommend them. They were excellent, and we had no real damage to speak of. The only things that I could class as damage was on the back of our fridge. You know, you have that kind of grid, the coil that goes kind of on the outside of the fridge, or ours does anyway. The shippers had taken the cable and kind of looped it around that and then wedged the plug in, and the prongs of the plug had kind of pierced the, I don't know, whatever the covering is at the back of the fridge. It had kind of just poked a hole in that. Not a big deal. It doesn't affect the working of the fridge, and it's not even something we would report or even class as damage. And then the only other thing I can think of, which wasn't damaged by the shippers or anything, it was just something that happened, was we had a very cheap kind of little TV unit, and we chose not to dismantle it because it was quite a cheap, softish wood little unit, and we just thought like taking it apart and putting it back together was going to cause some damage. It wasn't going to be good for it. It wasn't like a good sturdy solid piece that you could take apart and put together multiple times, so we chose not to take it apart. And that obviously stood in a container on the ocean for 12 weeks with the rocking that a ship will do. And like I said, it was soft wood, and so wherever the screws were in the wood, rocking back and forth kind of loosened them. So we were never actually able to tighten up that unit and like tighten the screws. It was very kind of flimsy and wobbly after that, which, like I said, it wasn't damage caused by the shippers or anything. It's just something that happened, and it's not a big deal. It was just a cheap unit anyway. But I have heard people getting their stuff where it's, you know, there's been more serious damage than that. Usually if you're hiring a professional to ship your stuff, they know what they're doing. They're going to package it appropriately. Very often you'll have your insurance with that company, so it's in their best interest to kind of make sure your stuff arrives in one piece and that you're not having to make any claims. But that is something to consider when you're shipping stuff from one country to another. There is a risk involved that your goodies may not arrive fully intact or in perfect condition. Something else to consider, especially if you're moving from somewhere like the US to somewhere like New Zealand, is that your voltage might be different and you might have to sell and replace certain appliances anyway. I believe lamps are fine to bring over, but anything with a motor or an engine or a heating coil, you are going to have a difference in voltage. You're either going to have to be buying transformers, which are then bulky and inconvenient to use with your appliances, or you'll just have to sell your appliances or give them away before you leave your country and then replace them when you get to New Zealand anyway. We moved from England to New Zealand, as I mentioned, and the voltage is the same, so we were able to bring all of our appliances with no problem. The only problem we had was our TV. We had to get a separate like Freeview box to be able to get public TV through our TV. So I don't know, doing it again, if we might have just replaced our TV. The thing about immigrating is it's so expensive, and when you sell something that you've already had, you're not going to get the full amount back for it. You're going to probably lose money, and then you move to your new country and you need to buy a new one. So you obviously can buy secondhand. That can be a little bit more effort and hassle to do it that way, so you're likely to lose some money in doing that. Something else to consider is you actually don't know what you are and aren't going to be able to use in your new home, especially if you've never even decided on a new place to stay before moving. Like I said, we managed to rent a house before we even left England. It was sitting waiting for us. We started renting it a month before we even left England, so it was ready for us. We kind of had pictures and, you know, an idea of what the house was going to be like. But even so, we shipped everything, we came over, and there were things that just didn't work in the house that we were renting. We actually rented 2 different houses before moving into the house that I'm sitting in currently, which is the house that we bought. And one of the things was curtains. In New Zealand, almost all curtains are thermal lined. Most houses, especially older houses, don't have double glazing here, and thermal lined curtains are very important for keeping the heat in winter. The curtains I brought over from England did not have thermal lining. They were just fabric, and more importantly, they just didn't fit the windows and the houses here. So we had rooms in the houses that we've lived in New Zealand where in one room there'll be multiple windows, like a window on one wall and a window on a different wall. So I would need multiple sets of curtains to go over those windows, and that just wasn't the case because the house that we were in England, in fact most of the houses, just had one, most often narrow window per room. The houses we rented came with blinds and curtains anyway, so I had these curtains boxed up for ages, and I in the end sold all of the curtains that we brought over, and I just bought curtains to go with the house that we bought here. And like I said, in the rentals I didn't need them anyway. So you may end up paying a lot of money to ship stuff from one country to another that you end up not needing. The good news is you could probably sell it here. Like I said, I think I made my money back on those curtains by selling them through Trade Me, or you can sell through Facebook Marketplace. But it is a bit of a pain to have shipped something halfway around the world just to not even use it. Something else to consider when you're shipping goods, especially appliances or tech equipment, is that your warranties will probably not apply because you're in a different country to where you actually bought the item. So just bear that in mind. I've seen some people in my Moving to New Zealand Facebook group, which I will link down below. We have going on around 20,000 members there, I think. It's a great group to kind of give a bit of peer support for people who are in the same position, trying to move over, wanting to move over. Most people are struggling at the moment because the borders are closed, obviously, but do check that out if you are considering moving to New Zealand. I've seen people asking, they're moving from country A to New Zealand, and they are wondering if they should pick up a new camera or laptop or whatever it is in country A, or if they should just wait and buy it here in New Zealand. Usually they're asking, kind of looking at the price, like maybe it's cheaper in country A and they're thinking they could save some money by doing that. But do bear in mind that your warranty may not apply if you do that. So it's just something to consider. Something else is that you will either have to omit items or thoroughly steam clean or professionally clean and bleach items that are involved with the outdoors. Hiking boots, bicycles, lawnmowers, things like that. If you want to bring your vacuum cleaner, MAF is going to want to inspect it. You're going to have to be sure that you've cleaned it so thoroughly that there is no chance of bringing any kinds of pollen, dust, seeds or anything in through the border. We chose to leave our bicycles, some of our power tools and camping equipment, tents, vacuum cleaner, tumble dryer. We just chose to leave all of that behind. These are all items that are going to kind of raise a red flag by MAF. They are going to inspect them very closely, and if there's anything amiss, you're either going to have to pay a fee to have it destroyed or pay a fee to have it cleaned. So if you are going to bring anything like that, be sure that you've cleaned it to within an inch of its life, as it's going to be thoroughly checked over when it gets here. Another con to shipping all of your stuff is you may not be ready for it by the time it arrives. So let's say you are moving to New Zealand, you've shipped your container of stuff, you arrive in New Zealand, you stay in temporary accommodation, and you take a while to find the right place to rent, or you decide to move areas, or whatever the situation is, and your stuff arrives in New Zealand and they say, right, we want to deliver it to your house. And you're like, but I don't have a house at the moment, I'm not ready for it, I've got nowhere to put it. Then you're going to have to deal with storing it, paying an extra storage fee. Your shipping company may have already discussed options with you, or they may not have, and now you're scrambling to find where to put this container and store it until you're ready to receive it. So that's something to bear in mind as well, that there may be extra costs involved with storing your container. So those are some things to consider, some pros and cons of shipping all of your goods. Like I said, we've done it both ways. The first time I remember feeling frustrated that I had, for example, bedside lamps, and then got rid of them, moved to England, and now I had to buy bedside lamps when I'd already had bedside lamps. And I did find that kind of frustrating, thinking I should have just brought the stuff that I had. The second time, like I said, we shipped everything, and for us that was the right decision. That was literally one of the best days of my life when our container arrived and I was reunited with all our stuff. You can think it's just stuff, get over it, but the things that make up your home and that you surround yourself with, they make a difference to how you feel. It's more than just stuff. It's the memories you create around your stuff and with your stuff, and it's your home and it's your history and it's familiarity. And for us it was the right decision to ship everything. I know people who have chosen not to ship everything, and that was the right decision for them. And of course there are shades of grey. It's not just you bring everything or you bring nothing. You can ship a part container or just a few boxes, but these are just some things to think about if you are making the decision whether or not to bring all your goodies when you are immigrating. I hope that you found this video helpful. I will leave a link down below and at the end of this video to my playlist of moving to New Zealand themed videos. I have quite a few on my channel, many answering questions. In fact, I still have more questions I need to answer, so I'll be making some more of those videos soon. If you have other questions or you want some peer support or a different perspective than I can offer, do consider joining my Moving to New Zealand Facebook group. I will leave the link down below, and if you mention when joining it that you've come through my videos or through my channel, then your request to join the group will be approved much quicker. So do go and check that out if it is relevant to you, and I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.